Okay, so here's a quick look at the tools you'll need before you start this job. Some of these are need to have, others of them are just the nice to have, I guess. Quarter-inch ratchet, always nice to have to get into the small spots. I actually only use this for the rectifier itself, for repositioning it into the airbox. I needed a 13, a 12, and a 10 mil wrench, 3/8 ratchet and an extension, a couple of pairs of pliers, some good side cutters just if you're moving things around and you got a zip tie. I needed a 6, a 5, and a 4 millimeter Allen key. That was for the tank, that was for the rectifier, and that one was for the seat, I believe. A pick set or a tiny nail will do in a pinch to unbolt your, unpin your connectors. Of course, drill and drill bits, good to have on you to make the holes in your airbox. This was my saving grace. A real nice long, thin screwdriver. This one's flexy too, but the nice long thin one for getting the intake tubes off of your airbox. A flat blade just to move some stuff around. It kind of worked better as a pry bar this time. And you know, your normal Phillips screwdriver if you don't have one of these nice long ones. Also, coffee. You'll want one of those. Preferably not McDonald's. These are awful coffees, but it was close. So a coffee's good. Dremel helped, just so I could shave down the bolts and make things nice and neat and tight and tidy in there. So the Dremel was definitely a good hand. I also actually ended up, if we go over here to the other side of the bench, use the hacksaw to straighten out some of the bolts. Or the 2 bolts on the rectifier. It was quicker than the Dremel. Just use the Dremel to shave them down. Some cigarettes and a lighter, probably a good idea if you are a smoker to have those, otherwise you're going to get incredibly angry at things and smash shit around. And yeah, that's about it. That's all the tools that you need for this. So basic hand tools is really all you need. If you have a small little tool set, you'll be all right. I highly recommend though the long thin screwdriver. It helped get into, I'll show you here, the little holes on the side of the frame just right below the gas tank to run through and get those flutes off. So definitely a good purchase. Anyway, so once you got all those tools together to do that, I think I talked a little bit about these tools in the past tense, like the job was already done, and the job is in fact already done. So this little segment of video is kind of out of place because it's going to be at the start, so you know what tools to get together before you even start this. Anyway, good luck with your repair. Like I said, took me about an hour and a half total, and that was taking my time and stopping for crap coffee and a whole bunch of cigarettes. So other than that, enjoy the rest of the video. It should go into some pretty good depth on how to replace your rectifier regulator and modify where you're going to put it so it doesn't burn out again. This is where your stator lives. It is an asshole. There's the wiring that goes all the way up in here. It's not in its stock location, is it? No. So that's the wire coming off your stator. We're going to route that differently. And right there's the cause of all of the problems ever on a GSXR. That is your rectifier regulator. Its plug is way up. Hold on. Its plug is way up in there someplace. So it's a real pain in the ass to get to. So we're going to move that. So first things first, you got to take your seat off. You'll need a 4 mil Allen key to do that. Or Allen socket, which makes life that much easier. So what you want to do is just pull the 2 bolts that hold your seat on. There's one in the exact location on the other side. And from there, your seat should slide forward just a little bit and then pop up and come out. So I'm going to see if we can do that. Slide forward just a bit and pop up and come out. Once you have your seat off, you got to take these 2 stupid little plastic things off. Now they are just sort of Velcro and they slide on, so a bit of a fight with it. But you want to pop the Velcro that sits up here off and then sort of wiggle it back and forth, and eventually it should come off the little plastic retainer that's in there. It should. There we go. And the same on the other side. Of course, that one just falls off. Okay, your next step from there is pulling up your tank. So, if you're going to pull your tank, you will need a 6 mil Allen key and 1 single bolt right up in the top. You're going to have to go ahead and Google all the torque specs, because I don't have those on me, but I will definitely be torquing this back to where it's supposed to be. Tank's kind of important to have it held down properly, being that you are riding a bomb. So there's a little washer that sits on the back of that bolt, save that. Then from there, you're going to prop your tank up. Now this one does not have the little tank holder, so we're going to have to find something that will hold it. Makes it easier if you look down here on the bottom of your tank. You have these two little vacuum lines. If you slide those off, you can get just that little bit more room out of the tank, and it's as simple as just sliding those off. Okay, so now that we have the tank supported with the ever so practical crowbar, it seems to work, because the stupid little tank support that's supposed to sit up in there is not here. So now we get to tackle this. Tackle your airbox. This is the easy part. These little sensors right here, they're just on little rubber grommets, so you don't even have to worry about breaking plugs or anything off on them. You can just slide them up and sort of stick them out of the way. They'll get in your way later, but for now they're alright. Same on that one. Now this one here, I believe, is the ambient air temperature sensor. You want to just go ahead and unplug that. And again, this is an 07, so I don't know if the sensors on other ones are different, but that's what we have on this. So once you got those three sensors off, you'll have a little butterfly clip here. You just squeeze that, just like a hose clamp, and fight it all the way back. There we go. And you can pull that hose off. And that's basically it that you can get to from here. That's all, because the plug you're after is way down. Where's my finger? There we go. Way down in there. Now some guys will leave the airbox in one piece. I want to take it out and check the air filter anyway. This hose here, which will be on the front brake side of the bike, this one's going to be a bit of a pain in the arse to get at. So once you got the top cover off, you can loosen off the airbox and pull it up a bit, and you should be able to get to that one. So to get the airbox off, you got the little screws all the way around that sit in there, and I believe there's one hiding down in that hole right in the center. So we'll get that off. Okay, so the top of the airbox is off. As you can see, there's a big gaping opening where the airbox should be. Air filter just sits in here. We pulled that out. So you got to take this bolt that's sitting here off. I got ahead of myself. Pulled that already, but the airbox doesn't come off yet. If you look, I'll pull my screwdriver out first. On the side of the frames on both sides of the bike, you have these little holes. These little holes go all the way through. Let's see here if I can focus. Into that little screw. It's probably easier to see it from up top. So that little screw right there, it's going to be one on each side. They hold the airbox into place. Okay, so you want to get to the little screw that's way up in there. Kind of a pain to get to, so you'll need a nice long screwdriver, hopefully a flexible one, a good source of light, and then you can get to it here. We'll hope the camera focuses. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the screwdriver running through the frame. There's a little hole in the side of your frame that's made for that, and it runs all the way through into the little screws on the back of your airbox. Now these ones, you don't have to take the screw all the way out. You just have to get the screw sort of loosened off. And once you got it loosened off, it's holding the, I guess, velocity stacks for your airbox in place. So we'll go ahead and get those two out, and then from there you can pull your air. Okay, so once you got those two screws off, you're going to be able to get your airbox most of the way out. You kind of got to wiggle it, and like I said, the screws, we'll just show those where they're on the box here. They're these guys right here. There's one, like I said, on each side, and they don't have to come all the way off just loose. There might be a little bit of a fight because the rubber here that gets a little warm and kind of sticks to the metal on your intakes. So you get that off, and then once you get that off, you go back to that hose I was talking about earlier, which is just the little butterfly clip. Again, you should be able to squeeze this with your fingers. And wiggle the little hose off, which can be a bit of a bitch. Make sure to pull straight down, otherwise you'll break the tab off. And that is the airbox out of the bike. So now that we have this out of the bike, we're going to figure out how we're going to get the rectifier in there. Now, got to find the rectifier plug. So, once you get your airbox out, you will be able to find this big lead here. Runs down just a little ways. You should be able to wiggle it out of there. But this is your rectifier plug right there. Now once you get that all the way out, there we go. Now this goes all the way down to your rectifier. So we're going to pull that off, and then this will come out when we pull the rectifier off. Now's a good time to check everything else. Once you're in your bike, you kind of got access to the top end, which makes life a lot easier. So if you're going to do spark plugs or any of that fun stuff, now's the time to do it. If not, from this point, unplug the 2 connections on your rectifier, one being here and the other one being on the stator. Once you have those unplugged, then you can go ahead and pull your rectifier out. Okay, so on the side of the bike here, your bikes may not have this. It's a little frame slider, so if you're looking for this location and using this as an identifier, please don't. You will see where your rectifier is, right on the side by the radiator. We'll pull out so you can see that. There are 2 little bolts on there, and they are 5mm Allen key bolts. So once you go ahead and get that out, you're going to have it. Now, we don't have it on there anymore. We've moved it, but the horn should bolt to that. You can just squeeze the wires once you get this bracket off. Squeeze the wires of your horn, and they should slide off. And take the rectifier and bracket assembly off as one. Don't even think about trying to unbolt the rectifier on the bike. It won't work. It's just going to give you more headache. So we'll get these 2 bolts out here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. There we go. Get that bolt out. And then we have 1 rectifier comes out. Now your horn on a factory location will be bolted right here. But since we had this out, we moved it. So you kind of gotta get your hand in and under and pull the wiring out. And there we have 1 rectifier. Now this one will not look like the one you pulled off your bike unless you've upgraded it already, as this is the upgraded rectifier from RM Stator. Now this bike was just ridden for 20 minutes, and that stator is already hot. So think about hot day, hot ride, not going to work. So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to pull these 2 bolts off from the bracket that holds it all in. The bracket we'll put back in because we're going to bolt the horn back up to it. And then from there, we are going to engineer a way to get this stator into this airbox. So what we're essentially going to do is just drill a couple holes and go from there. Once I've got that all figured out, we'll come back to it. Okay, so an executive decision has been made on where we're going to put the rectifier. I was just trying to figure out best places for airflow, best places to avoid heat. There is a kit and a company online somewhere I saw briefly that puts it in a bracket that hangs in front of the radiator, which I thought would be a pretty good place too. But since I don't have that, we're going to engineer something else. So if we come around to the bench here, what I've done is I took the pins out of this connector here. There's 3 pins in that connector and the 4 pins in this connector. So took the pins out, pretty simple. Just get yourself a nice flat blade screwdriver in there. Come on, focus. I don't know if that's going to focus. It's thinking about it. There we go. Anyway, so you get yourself a little screwdriver or a nail even to just move those plastic tabs. They will unlock your wiring, just so you don't have to drill a huge hole in here to get these connectors through the hole. So what I did was put the rectifier inside the side of the airbox here, so it has as much airflow from outside of the bike as possible. That's the intake side there. And the air filter just simply sits on top of these gaskets and mounting points, or just the mounting points, I guess, that run over the top of it. Then what I did is I just ran 2 bolts through it with some washers, bolted them up underneath, and then I cut them off. Just took a grinder and a Dremel to it and got them nice and flush, so there's not a whole lot of bolt hanging out there. And pulled the heat shielding for the wiring through as well, just so it doesn't rub on the hole or make any problems in there. Ran the wiring through, and now we can start looking at hooking it back up, I think, is our next step. Okay, so figured I'd sort of get this half in now, just so you can kind of see what's going on. Managed to get, if I can get my fat hand out of the way, the stator plug routed up through the top here. You can see it comes up through there. I've got it zip tied just beside the throttle cables there, just so there's no chance of it binding up while we're going. The rectifier cable is basically in the same place it was. It's just pointing up instead of down now. So that's all nicely wired in there. Remember, when you're putting your airbox back on, don't forget to fish this tube out and get that one hooked up while it's going in. Also the 3 sensors that you pulled off of the airbox on the way in. So there's 1, 2, and I'm glad I mentioned it because I don't know where the third one is now. It's in here somewhere. We'll find it. And that's missing. There it is. Okay. So now we have well, I think they're relays actually. I'm not too sure. I haven't quite looked into that. But they're up and out of the way now. So you've got 1, 2, and the third one here. Just got them up out of the way. And then you should, I apologize for the camera work. I've lost my trusty assistant for the moment. And what a surprise. It is my trusty assistant's bike that I'm working on. Convenient. So we got that hose hooked up there on the side, and we'll just fight with this little butterfly here. There we go. So bring that up. These don't have to be tensioned at all. They're basically more of a breather, so they're not. I think this is the PCV crank vent. I think is on this side. Regardless, they're not holding any pressure or anything on there. So don't worry if these little butterflies are a little on the weak side. As long as they clamp down, just like this one does now. There we go. So that's slid up. Where'd it go? There we go. That's slid up onto the tube here, and the butterfly is locked on. And then with a little bit of gentle persuasion, I should say, the airbox itself should just wiggle its way back into place. And yeah, I'll have to put the camera down and wiggle this thing in and get it in there, and then bolt it all up and carry on. Okay, so another thing worth mentioning here is that when you get your airbox back on, you'll notice that in here on your intake, there's the rubber from the stack that sits on there. Now coming around here, again if it'll focus, that rubber sits way down on there. Now you want to make sure once you've got your airbox in that you go ahead and get your finger in there and have a feel where the rubber meets the metal there, and make sure they're pretty well lined up and that this is as far down towards the engine as you can get it. So once you've got that, you can look on the side of your stacks here. Let me try and get a light in there. If I can find my light. Of course, there's never a light available when you need one. So if we look down, where is it? Here, this bar here, and these little rubber bits. That's the rubber that's on the other side of your stack. So you want to make sure that that has sat down as flush as possible, so you can get it all the way down to your intake manifold. That's the last thing stopping any air or whatnot getting into your intake or your engine, so you want to make sure that that's sealed. Anyway, so the bottom part of the airbox is on now. It's secure, nice and tight everywhere. The bolt has been put back in the top, rectifier has been plugged in and all seated in there. Now we can go ahead and find our air filter. This is also a good time to replace this. If you're in there, might as well have a look. Now this one is a bit of an aftermarket one, so it has a lip built in on it. So you don't need to replace the factory gasket that runs along here. The lip on the air filter itself does that for you. So that sits in there real nice. Lots of room out of the way of the rectifier. Now we go ahead and put our air box on. And the air box basically just sits in there. Don't forget to put your sensors back on. I'm going to go ahead and do up the airbox screws that go all the way around. I'm sure nobody wants to see that. And we'll go from there. Okay, so now all the little airbox screws have been put together and done up and tightened all the way around. They're just screws, so I didn't think you really need to see how to do that. If you don't know how to do that, don't work on a bike or anything for that matter. Don't forget, in this little hole all the way down there, there is another screw for your airbox. I've seen a lot of people try to fight these things off and forget that there's a screw in there, so do that. Make sure you don't forget to do your vacuum hoses back up, or breather hoses, sorry. I'm more automotive than motorcycle, and motorcycles don't really do much with vacuum. This one's going to be a pain in the ass, so we're going to try and find our trusty little pliers here. Just to squeeze that one and let it... This is really hard to do holding a phone. / high-end video camera equipment. Okay, hold on. Okay, so that was a lot more difficult than I thought, but the little butterfly here again is done up on the hose. When you're putting your tank back on, you will probably, I don't know if you'll do it or not, I did it just to get myself that little bit more lift, but there's these two vacuum hoses here. They go back up. Let's actually show you instead of showing you what my fingers look like. So there's two more vacuum hoses. They go back up onto your tank over here. They're different sizes, so you can't really screw that up. And once you're done that, you know, everything's basically in the reverse. Put your tank back on. Don't forget to put your little side thingies on in your seat and all that stuff. And that's that. That's one rectifier relocated. I'll also note here that once you've gotten the rectifier out, it leaves a ton of room for a big ass horn. So maybe if you've got the bracket and the time, go get yourself a big ass horn and put one of those in there. Figured I'd get it. A couple of people maybe pay more attention. Anyway, so yeah, so the rectifier, let's try that again, is in here now, right in the path of the intake air. So you got your intake air comes in the front here, down your intake tube path on the side, and then right in, I got this bar's in the way, but comes in right about there-ish. Get under the bar. There we go, yeah, so your intake duct comes in there, passes through the frame. Right there is your other side of the airbox. So in one side, through the frame, out the other, into right where the regulator rectifier is sitting. Stator we changed last time. It did not fail this time, so we left that in. Quick rundown on the stator. It's pretty well the easiest thing you can possibly replace on this bike once you get the plug out. You basically just take your fender off, take these bolts off around the side cover. This slides off, and your stator is on the inside. Make sure you're very, very clean when you're doing that. Replace all the gaskets that are around. I believe there's a gasket in here, as well as there's a gasket here. Make sure you have a kit to replace all those. Again, test and check your battery. Make sure that works. Make sure everything is charged up and good with the battery first before you replace that too, because you might be able to save yourself some money there. And that's it. One rectifier regulator replaced on an 07 GSXR. Hope you enjoyed the video. Any comments or questions, put them in the comments or questions section below.